The constellations are misaligned, and you must use deduction and logic to rearrange the stars in the sky faster than your opponent to win logic and lore. This is a 2-player Oni game coming to Kickstarter from Weird Giraffe Games, designed by Darren Reckner and Jason Hager. You're watching Table Talk Reviews. I'm Matt Mitchell. Allow me to teach you how to play logic and lore, and then I'll share my first impression. To set up logic and lore, place the number cards between both players in order from 1 to 9. If you're playing Starlight, you can have the question side face down. Give each player a set of the 9 numbered cards and remove any black hole cards for the first couple games. So you'll have cards numbered 1 to 9, shuffle those up, and deal them face down on your side of the table. The first step on your turn is Move the Heavens. This allows you to rearrange your cards based on any information that you believe you now know, or maybe you just thought of in between turns. At the beginning of the game, you're not going to need to do that, and you can go right to the next step, which is Align the Stars. This is your chance to win the game by revealing all of your cards, and if they're in order, matching the center cards, you win the game. If you reveal all your cards and any of them are wrong, you immediately lose and the game is over. So you want to be sure when you do this step. These 2 steps are optional, so the main mandatory step of your turn is Divine the Cosmos. This step is to gain access to a new question that will provide information throughout the game. At the start of the game, you have access to the first question, point to each aligned on the number 1 card, and the 9th question, point to the greatest. You'll always be allowed to ask those 2 questions. However, you only gain access to 1 additional question each turn. So on my first turn, I could place a token of my color on the number 7 card, giving me access to the question, is it on the correct half? I'll get into all the questions in just a moment, but now this will allow me to ask questions 1, question 7, and question 9. Just a note that these cat pieces will be dragons in the final version of the game. The next step is Choose Focus. You will choose 2 cards and lift them so that your opponent can see those cards and you cannot. Then in the Search the Sky step, you'll ask the questions you have access to reveal information about these cards. When you're asking questions, you must move in order, so I can ask question 1 first, then 7, then 9. If I don't feel question 1 is going to be particularly useful in this case, I can skip it and move to number 7. You might want to do this as you gain access to more questions, because you stop asking questions as soon as you receive a yes from your opponent. So if knowing that they are sequential is not particularly useful to you when you've unlocked this question, you might want to skip it to get to something that you feel is more useful to the information you already know. Based on the information you received, you can now use the tokens to keep track of that information, and you once again get to Move the Heavens, rearranging your cards based on that new information. These tokens are going to change in the final version of the game, but here, let's say I got a yes on the is it on the correct half, and so I would mark this card as being on the correct half so that I don't have to remember that and don't accidentally move it to the other side. Then it's the next player's turn. They will add a token to unlock a question for them, ask you about 2 of their cards, rearrange their cards based on that information, and this will go back and forth until one player believes they have all 9 of their cards in order and is confident enough to reveal them during the Align the Stars phase. Let's take a look at each question in closer detail. Question number 1 is, are these aligned? In this case, the player will point to either or both of the cards that you've revealed to tell you which one is lined up with the number card it's currently in front of. When you get a yes to question number 1, you can reveal the card face up that the opponent pointed to. In this case, 4 was aligned in the correct spot, so I can now reveal it for the rest of the game. If the question is a no, you can move on to the next question you've unlocked. In this case, number 2 is, are these sequential? If your cards are numbered 4 and 5 or 5 and 4, it doesn't matter if they're flipped and in the right order. As long as those numbers come before or after each other, the answer to this question will be yes. Question number 3 is the sum exactly 10? If you're holding up a 5, that answer is always going to be no because there's only one 5, but if you have a 9 and a 1, or a 7 and a 3, and so on, the answer will be yes, and so you get some information out of that. Question number 4 is the sum odd? So if you have a 5 and a 3, the total is 8. When you add those two numbers together, it is an even number, so the answer is no. If it was a 5 and 2, that total is 7. Yes, it is an odd sum. Question number 5, is the sum greater than 10? This is going to tell you if you have a couple really large numbers that are more than 10. So if you had an 8 and a 6, yes, the total is more than 10, as opposed to question 3, which is exactly 10. Question number 6, is either within one space of being aligned? So in this case, say a player had revealed a 3 in the 5 spot, the answer would be no. It is not within one space of being aligned. But if they revealed it in the 4 spot, it's next to the 3 where it belongs, so yes, it is within one space of being aligned. For question number 7, you will choose one of the 2 cards you've revealed. You can do this by holding it higher than the other card you've selected and ask, is it on the correct half? If the card you're asking about is a number 5, the answer will always be yes, it is on the correct half because 5 is directly in the middle. Conversely, if you're asking about a card in the slot number 5, say example 9, the answer will always be yes. So you probably shouldn't ask this question for a card in slot number 5 because you're going to get a yes always and it's not going to give you any information that's useful. Question number 8 is if swapped would either be aligned. For example here, if I was revealing a 5 and a 7 here and I asked if swapped would either be aligned, the answer would be yes. If I swapped these 2 cards, number 7 would be in the correct spot. Now I don't know that. I could think that this card is an 8 and should be over here, but it gives some information to go on that you can narrow down with other questions. And the last question is question number 9, where the player will simply point to the larger numbered card. Here are a few examples on how to use the tokens. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because these tokens are going to change in the final edition of the game. But say I was asking about these 2 cards and I was told that this one is greater. I can place this token, which has the larger moon on it, and this one, which has the smaller moon, to know that these are the 2 questions I asked about. The color matches. This was the larger one and this was the smaller one. And during my Move the Heavens phase, I might want to switch them around so that the larger card is in a higher spot than the lower card. Now, if I was asking about these 2 cards and I got the answer yes to that they're sequential, I could place these matching red tokens on here that show that these 2 are side by side. So when I figure out where one of them is, I know that the other one is on either side of it. If I asked about these 2 cards and was told yes, the sum is exactly 10, I can place these tokens on here so that when I figure out that this is a 6, I can know that this must be a 4. To get a feel for the game the first time you play, you can flip the cards face down so they don't have questions and instead play the Starlight mode. This has 4 questions that you will always ask in order. You are permitted to skip, but you can never ask one question further down and then go back to another question. You always ask them in the top-down order. So the first is the same as question 1 in the Star Bright mode. Point to each card in the aligned spot. Then are they sequential? Then is the sum exactly 10? And then point to the greatest. There's none of the more complex questions. You just ask these 4 questions always. You don't have to place any tokens to unlock questions. You're always having access to these questions on your turn. Once you become a pro at Logic and Lore, you can increase the difficulty by adding in these black hole cards. Simply find the ones with your color back and shuffle them into the deck and lay them out, same as you would before, only this time you're going to have some cards to the left of 1 or to the right of 9. depending on how many black holes you want to add in to increase the difficulty. Now here, when I'm asking questions, let's reveal 2 cards here. Hopefully I get a black hole. I didn't. Let's flip another one. There's gotta be a black hole someplace. All right, say I was asking my opponent about these 2 questions here. When asking questions about the black hole, they count as nothing and they're never aligned. So I would get no to point to each aligned, and the players should always respond to no about any questions relating to the black hole. If 2 black holes are selected, when you get to the final question of point to which one is larger, they would simply point to the larger black hole. You can see this one is much smaller. So as you ask questions about the black hole with other questions and keep getting no's or answers that seem off based on what you know about the other card, you might eventually be able to figure out, okay, this card has to be a black hole. And of course, there are tokens to indicate that, and these may change once again in the final production copy of the game. Straight away, I absolutely loved logic and lore. This is my type of deduction game with numbers. I really enjoy Shipwreck Arcana and things like Turing Machine, but one of the things I find with those games is that whoever really understands logic super well is going to lead the charge when it is a cooperative game and then just kind of confirm with everyone else, does that make sense to you? Are you okay if I make this pick? And then if it's competitive, that person is just dominating and everyone is going to lose to them every single time unless they get super lucky. But the brilliant thing logic and lore does is allow players to compete fairly at different skill levels. You can have one player playing the Star Bright mode where they only have 2 questions to begin with and then need to unlock questions progressively each turn to be able to get the type of information they want. And the other player can be playing the Starlight mode where they're just always asking the same 4 questions each turn. And then if the good player is getting even better and you still can't win against them, you can mix in black hole cards to kind of mix up the information they receive. Sometimes the information will be counterintuitive, or they'll get information and then the next set of information they get is counter to what they were told previously, and then they realize, okay, there must be a black hole in one of these cards. So it kind of levels the playing field, which is a really cool thing. Another thing I liked about the game is that it's super satisfying to get a few bits of information and then shuffle a ton of cards around confidently thinking you have them in the right place. And it's even funnier to watch your opponent do it knowing full well that they just put all the cards in the wrong places. Another thing about that is you're seeing everything your opponent does. So sometimes you might see, okay, they have it next turn, and you can only reveal all your cards in an attempt to win at the beginning of your turn. So if you know that they have it, you just have to give it your best shot and take a stab at it with the information you already have, and maybe you're only got a 50-50 shot or even less than that, but you're gonna lose if they're correct and reveal at the start of their next turn, or you can just go for it and try to win by revealing your cards before them. So that's like a choice you have to make, because maybe they think they have it, but they're not 100% confident, so maybe they'll spend another turn asking questions. So do you risk revealing it because you think they're definitely gonna reveal on their next turn, or do you wait and get some more information to be able to more confidently reveal on your next turn? All in all, if you like this style of deduction games with number logic, things like Shipwreck Arcana, or even the Search for Planet X, this is 1000% a game you need to check out. Definitely go look at it on Kickstarter and subscribe to this channel for more board game videos to come.